get started with the ones that have. Well, welcome to our weekly Zoom class. This is week 8, and you are past the hump mark now, and you are on the other end of things, and it will go fast. I will tell you, it will go very, very fast. As Dr. Lamb said last night, for those that were able to join the town hall, I would say that more than 75% of the APSLs have gone through, and it's been some tug and war, but at the end, the results have been good. The scores are coming back, and overall, they are very, very with the outcomes of how how things are looking with the APSL, which is just Dr. Crawford that's just good news that when they move into the APTEL, which we're going to talk more about tonight, that they should be able to. It should be smooth sailing once they understand the process now, and all of that is not new. So you're going into the APTEL, fully equipped, knowing what the expectations are. You're going in a different direction, but the process does not change. So, and we'll talk about that a little bit more as well. Dr. Lamb, if you're there, let me know. Okay, he's not there yet. He'll let me know when he comes on. Okay, if y'all see him, let me know. But we're
Dr. Stedman, I had some issues with the Zoom link, so I had to do a workaround. I don't know if that's his issue as well.
Okay, well, he's with another group, so he may not have been able to break away from them yet.
Good deal.
But anyway, we're gonna.
Sounds kind of hard to miss.
Yeah, so that's it. Just want to, and I don't know. I'm going to see if this will come up. I want to. Week 8. Let me see, and it's not even. That's okay. And guys, you're going to have to work with me. I tried to get this down here, and I've got it. I've got where I've pulled them up, but I can't. It's layered, and I don't know how to get away from it. But I wanted to go over basically what and this is found under your week 8 as well. So you would just get an understanding of what we are going to be doing this evening. These are the 3 topics that are going to be discussed by 3 of your instructors tonight. Dr. Hamilton's going to be talking about the role of principals in addressing teacher shortages. Dr. Shepard's going to be talking about teacher empowerment using Standard 4 Human Resource Leadership from the North Carolina Standards for School Executives. And then Dr. Crawford's going to be speaking on creating conditions for effective professional development opportunities and challenges. And all of these topics we can relate them to the development of the APTEL. So I want you to be thinking about teacher empowerment, teacher leadership, and those things as these instructors are talking tonight. In addition, we will be talking about Dr. Lamb when he comes on. He's going to remind you of some task stream responsibilities. And then I'll remind you of some of the things that are due this week and next week. And then I'm going to just review task 1 of the APTEL so that will give you a chance to fully get started on it, even though you're on spring break next week and we will not be coming online. So that basically is giving you an idea of where we are with things. I was just seeing if Dr. Lamb had come online yet before we get started. We'll skip around, and whenever he gets online, we will move forward with some other things. Dr. Hamilton, we're actually going to begin with you, and let me see if I can pull up your document. Let me see if I've got it down here, or if I'm going to have to go in there and pull it up.
Okay, well, while you're pulling that up, I'll go ahead and get started. So good evening, everyone. It's so good to see you. So we're going to talk about the role of principals in addressing teacher shortages. So before we get to the actual principal role, let's start by talking about a little bit to activate our thinking for just a minute about maybe why we have a shortage and some things that occur that help prevent shortages. So, of course, retirements, people moving and things like that create a shortage. But I don't really know how it is at Gardner-Webb right now, but at UNCW, because I'm in Wilmington, we just don't have as many people going into the profession to the point that we've actually had a reduction in interns. We used to have them every year, even in elementary ed, which was always the area that was flooded. But we don't even have them every year now because of the reduction of people going into education. Class size reduction also in grades K through 3 has created a need for more teachers, so that exacerbates the issue with the shortage that we're having. And then, of course, depending on your geographic location, that also impacts what kind of an experience you are having with a shortage. So you would think in Wilmington we would not have one, but sometimes we do, especially in those high-need areas in middle school and high school. So some things, just a quick list of the things that the state might do to try to help alleviate that shortage is the Task Force for Recruitment and Retention are constantly working on alternative certification areas to help bring more people in. The salary schedule, especially bumping up that beginning teacher salary and other financial incentives like working in high needs areas. And then also policies for induction programming and mentors for beginning teachers. And then your LEA, your local education agency, and that's basically just the county for which you work. They can also sometimes, based on their local tax base and opportunities, can offer financial incentives such as supplements to teachers. And then also they are required to provide that induction programming for mentors for beginning teachers. And all these things are helpful, but they're really out of the control of the principal. And sometimes these things feel very distant from the principalship, especially since you're the one sitting in the chair with the vacancies. So the best way to avoid the woes of the teacher shortage is really and truly try to prevent it at your level. So what is in the principal's control, and what are some of the things the principal can do to not only help get the very, very best teachers that they can, but then to keep them and maintain them once you have them. So just realize the power that principal leadership plays in teacher attrition. It's very, very powerful. Market your school like we talked about last week. Make it the place, advertise it, make it the place that those very best teachers want to be. Mike Rutherford has a whole thing, a book and a professional development about 23 teaching talents. And he says in his research that the very best teachers want to work for the very best leaders. So that's what I know you are aspiring to be, so that you can attract and retain those very best teachers. Those best teachers want to work with a strong, supportive leader. They want to work in a positive professional school culture. They want to have collegial relationships. They want time to collaborate. They want time to plan with their colleagues. They want to make sure that they're going to be provided the supplies and resources they need. They want to work in a place that have supportive parents. They want to have input into decision making, and they want to work in a trusting and respectful environment. So what can you as a principal do? Well, first of all, intentionally pair your mentors for your beginning teachers. Pair those beginning teachers with your very, very best. Who do you want them to emulate, and pair them with them? Someone that will support them and guide them when they're feeling frustrated and feel like they want to quit and that they're not making enough money to pay their bills, and they want to stay just because it's just such an intrinsically rewarding experience for them. Think about those people that you hire from somewhere else, but they're not a beginning teacher. Still pair them with a buddy. Even though you're not required to give them a mentor, pair them too with your very, very best. Who do you want them to emulate? Oftentimes those folks are overlooked because we consider they have experience, but they're still new and they still need that support. Think about the classroom location. Put them in a classroom, in a grade level where people will lift them up and not tear them down. Place them around your positive people that you want them to be hearing, teaching across the hall. You want them emulating those folks. Think about the evaluation and the descriptive feedback that you're providing. I read recently that you should go into a new teacher's room the first day and give them some feedback. And I thought, woo, because my thought was always, well, let me give them a minute. But the perspective of the writer that I read, and I can't remember where I read it, but the perspective was that they are there and they want to do a great job and they want some kind of positive feedback that very first day that, hey, yeah, I am doing a good job and I am appreciated here. Give them opportunities for leadership. When you see a spark in that new person, let them share, let them lead in your school. Encourage them, acknowledge them, build them up. Don't let them be around people who would tear them down, and build them up and encourage them. DeWitt Jones was a photographer for National Geographic. He has a great video called Focus on What's Right with the World, because when you do that, you have the energy to fix what's wrong. So focus on what's right. Provide that personalized professional development. You walk into a school, the teachers that have been there forever have been doing the same programs, they've been trained, and you're walking in trying to learn every single thing all at one time, and it is very overwhelming. So decide what in chunks, what you need for them to learn, when, support them, provide that support for them so they can learn it, so that they can build up their repertoire so that they can fit into your school community. Provide opportunities for them to observe your very best teachers. We have been doing guided observations in our building, and we've grown it till now every single teacher is participating. So we're going around, we're watching, and they're observing their colleagues, and they're learning from them, and they're applying what they're learning, and it has been very, very powerful, not only for teaching, but also for the culture of our building. Communicate frequently, communicate clearly. Be visible and accessible, and establish that professional relationship. It really does mean a lot to them when you care enough to go in their rooms every single day. They know that you're there. They see that you see what they're doing, and you're acknowledging them, and you're supporting them, and you're letting them know that you do care. And when you're hiring, which might be the most important part of what you do, don't ever take a shortcut with that. Don't take a shortcut with the interviewing. It is okay to interview more than one time to make sure that you're getting the people that you want. This is an interesting thing I used to do years ago, haven't done it in a long time, but I used to interview people in the afternoons, and then I would call my best candidates back at 7 or 7:15 the next morning, because we had to be there at 7:15 every morning. And you'd be surprised at how different sometimes people are at 7:15 than they are at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So that's always eye-opening. And don't ever, ever, ever skip on calling their references, their most recent employers, because that, and talking to them, that is where you're really going to get your very, very best insight about who you're getting ready to hire. So there's just a few little tidbits about some things that you can do in your building to keep and maintain and grow your very best teachers in these days of growing teacher shortages, because it is important that we grow the ones that we have, that we retain them, because the pool is not that wide to replace them with.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Hamilton. And again, you can find this document under week 8 in Blackboard. And these are, as you are working on developing your plans and your action plans for the APTEL, just remember, there's some good information in here that you can build on as you are looking at the best practices that you will be needing, as you're building that. So we'll be referring back to some of these things as well. Let me go to, I want to go on before we go any further. I want to pull up that. The APTEL template. Remember last night when Dr. Lamb pointed out under the APTEL template and materials, he pointed out several things that we have already placed in there that will help you with the development of the APTEL. So just please be reminded that that information is there. Um, let me. And before moving to our other speakers, I want to go out, remind you again, remember that the FTO is an action plan that is all about teacher empowerment and leadership. In prompt one, and Dr. Glenn pointed this out last night, but I want to go over it again. Just remember that in prompt one that you're doing a literature review, and in each of these areas, you will have a minimum of 3 references in APA style, so please remember that. In the video that you were given last night, he explained some of these in more in detail, so I would refer back to that. But make sure that you are relating all of this to empowering teachers as leaders in the school and empowering teachers in the classroom. Again, 15 references, and it's prompt number 1.
Dr. Stedman.
That if you have prompt number 1, there is going to be prompt number 2.
Dr. Stedman.
Yes.
So apparently there were some students they say that they get them echo feedback from you, and I can't figure out why.
Yes, it's a really bad echo, like feedback, like we're hearing you repeat, like it's bad. I don't know what it's doing.
Let me hold just a second. Let me see what we can do here. I'm gonna. Okay, what about now? Can you hear the echo now?
That's better.
Okay, is the echo gone? Okay, good.
It's gone.
Okay, good. I don't know what I did, but I did something. Thank you for letting me know that.
You're welcome.
Again, as a reminder, just remember that anytime you see prompt 1, you know that there's going to be a prompt 2 somewhere. And this was a problem with the with the APSL. Sometimes people would not realize that embedded down there that there was another prompt. So anytime you see prompt number 1, you know that there's going to be a prompt number 2. Again, because of the echo, let's look at prompt number 1 again. Your responsibility in prompt number 1 is that you're doing another literature review. However, remember our focus in evidence 1 was all about the student. It was about student achievement. We began with the most important thing. That is our product. Our students are our product. And student achievement is why we're there, to take them where they are and move them in a positive direction to make things better for our students. So we began with our students because that is our most important product. The next evidence is that we can't teach our students and we can't take them from point A to point B, and we can't be effective with them if we don't have good teachers, if we don't have good leaders in that classroom. So evidence 2 is all about improving quality instruction in your school. And we're going to look at everything that we can do that we can do to try to make that what we're doing, our whole purpose for being there, to make it better. So evidence 2 is all about empowering teachers as leaders inside the school building and also inside that classroom. And your literature review should focus on those things that are going to, those best practices that the research says is out there that's going to help make this happen. And then prompt number 2, the candidate's going to create a checklist based on, actually you're doing 2. You're doing, I took some notes right here. Actually, when you do the APTEL, just remember that you're going to follow the same format as you did with the completion of the APSL. You will complete a new cover page, and the only difference is going to be that it identifies evidence number 2, and you put your name there. That's the only thing you do on that page. The school profile that you created for evidence number 1 will be used again for evidence number 2. In fact, it's going to be used with all 6 evidences. And the only thing you do, if you see a need to make a change along the way, that's okay. But if you don't and you're satisfied with it, then that is the same profile that you're going to use consistently throughout building all 6 of your evidences. Task number 2. The candidate's going to create a checklist based on the research. And what research are we talking about? Your research in prompt 1. When you go back to prompt number 1, where you've got those 5 areas and you're doing the literature review on best practices for teacher empowerment and teacher leadership, you're going, when you develop that checklist, you're thinking back to the research that you've done in task 1, prompt number 1, because they all should be related. So you're going to create a checklist based on the research. It should align with your checklist. They must be research-based due to validity and reliability concerns. Dr. Lamb pointed out he's given you examples of checklists based on research from Todd Whitaker. He gave you some based on research by Marzano, but there's many, many more out there. And my challenge to you over the next week, because we're not coming online next week because it's spring break, but my challenge to you is you've got time to go into your school building. You need to begin talking to your administration, looking for, instruments that they use. Your system may use instruments. I will tell you, although this is a North Carolina program, South Carolina, you have to look at actually what is used in your schools there. South Carolina, and I can't remember the evaluation instrument that I think y'all started it last year, and I know that they were moving more into it this year. But embedded in that instrument, there is a lot of what we're talking about for evidence number 2 and task 1. A lot of it is embedded in that statewide instrument. It's used statewide. I know that. So I would tell South Carolina people, look at that instrument and see what is in there. There actually were some components in there that would lend itself to becoming a teacher leader. And then, what does it look like in the classroom? If your school if your principal does walkthroughs, there should be an instrument that they use when they walk through, not a 3-minute walkthrough. As Dr. Lamb said, it should be about something that could last about 15 minutes if they walk through. But there should be an instrument that when they go in, these are the things that they're looking for as a classroom teacher leader, and there should be able to be places for some feedback on there. Dr. Shepard provided an instrument that I'll show you in a little bit, but it's dealing with instructional rounds. Many systems have gone to doing instructional rounds, which is a type of walkthrough, a type of evaluation. But when you look at whatever these instruments are, it can't be just something that you create out of thin air. It must be research-based. It must be based on somebody has done some research behind this, and you can support it with the research. You can document evidence that is research-based. Now, if your system is using it, then obviously it would be research-based. If it's something that your school system requires, I would assume that it would be research-based, and that that is evidence that your school system has adopted it and they use it. So if there is something out there already, then by all means, do not reinvent the wheel. Use what is out there. North Carolina, your North Carolina Teacher Working Conditions Survey. There are segments built into that teacher working conditions survey that you can actually pull and use, and that is research-based, it's reliable, it's valid, it's got all the things that you need that you can pull, and you can create an instrument based on the questions that's asked in that teacher working condition survey. You can create an instrument that you can send out to teachers via SurveyMonkey, or you can create a document that you can get valid results back from. So use what you've got. Use what you've got, what's out there, to create what you need for this. South Carolina, I know that you do not have the teacher working condition survey, but it's built in advanced ed. You use advanced ed. North Carolina, you also have advanced ed that you can pull from. These are lots of sources where you can go and you can find research-based, evidence-based, reliable and valid instruments. Dr. Crawford, you have anything you want to say about this portion at this point as a principal?
No, but would like to echo something that Dr. Hamilton mentioned earlier about making sure that when you are hiring, that you do your due diligence. I will be the first to admit I've made that mistake. I actually hired a degree instead of a person, and it turned out to be one of the more bad hires that I've made. So, I would just really echo that.
Okay, right. And Dr. Hamilton and Dr. Shepherd, both of you chime in on this, if you've got any thoughts about this before we move on. Just a reminder, for prompt number 2, just remember, there are two separate instruments. The first one is going to be a checklist reflecting empowerment as a school leader, not inside the classroom, as a school leader. The second one is going to be an instrument that measures, like the walkthrough instrument, that looks as a teacher leader in the classroom. So you're looking at leadership outside the classroom. You're looking at leadership inside the classroom. Dr. Shepherd, do you have a comment?
I'm just looking at a question here. One of the students asked, can you be more specific about what to look for in the hiring process? And that's another question that a student has just asked here.
Okay, Dr. Hamilton, or any of you as principals can answer that question.
So I think one thing is always look at their resume or what they tell you when they come for an interview. So talk to them about where they've worked, so they don't have their current principal or assistant principal listed as a reference. So that's a huge red flag. Or if you call someone for a reference and you say, well, I interviewed Danny Stedman today, and what can you tell me about him? And they say, well, he worked here. They're just like quiet and evasive. Sometimes people don't want to just tell a stranger, particularly, just everything they really like to say, but really sort of listen sometimes for what people are not saying. And one time I heard a speaker say, ask the principal to think about their teaching staff and their top 10 teachers. Was this person in your top 10? Was this person in your top 5? Was this person your top teacher? And think through it like that, sort of putting it in perspective and really drilling them down and sort of pinpointing them about where they would rank this person. But I think that reference is one of the most pivotal things you can do.
I think also when you speak to any potential candidate, when you think about human resource leadership, you're talking about your school as a unique learning community and institution. So one of the big questions you want to get down to and get a good answer to is, what is that person's goal? What do they aspire to do? Where do they fit into your school? Hopefully you're in a position where you have some great candidates and you have fabulous teachers, or at least above par teachers that you can work with. You have multiple ones, but which one of those fit your culture and what you're trying to do and accomplish? Because as the leader of the school, when you think about leadership in the human resources way, you have a vision for the school. What human resource is going to fit the vision that you have and where you want to take that school? And that's a unique approach to finding out how that person is going to fit into your school or specific department. So you want to get down to, yes, the skills. You want to get down to what are they capable of doing. And that's the most important part. But where do they fit in your school? And where do they fit into your vision for the school? And you have to ask some great questions surrounding that.
That's right.
The other thing I'll add is, and I'm just going to keep it real. One of the things I try to cue in on are candidates with what I call a save the world complex. They come in and they want to teach because it's what they've always wanted to do. And, my third grade teacher said when I was playing with my dolls, you're going to be a good teacher, and that kind of stuff. To me, some people say, well, doesn't that show you they have heart? What I have found in doing this now for almost 20 years, 15 in the principalship, is that you find people that will lower their standards because they don't know, they don't have what it takes really to take students who they will know going in may be struggling, maybe 2, 3, 4 years behind, set high standards and bring the kids to the standards and not the standards down to the kids. And like Dr. Shepherd said, being able to ask good questions, being able to ask hard questions of candidates and eliciting, that answer is critical. Dr. Lamb mentioned last night having 37 vacancies at Eastway Middle School. Now, I was an assistant principal there well after he left, but that's the kind of school where you need to ask, serious questions because you simply know what the candidate's going to face when they walk into the classroom. So this is being honest about what your needs are, and then being honest about how that person is going to fit into, like Dr. Shepherd said, your overall HR plan for your school and the district.
And you're right. All three of you are right. And just piggybacking on what Dr. Crawford said and Dr. Lamb said, it was back in 1998 when I was assigned to a high school. I was there for 6 years. I was hired in the middle of July. I had 2 weeks before school started. It was a low-performing school, had been deemed low-performing by the state. I had a state assistance team 1 year after I was there. When I went there, I had 2 weeks to hire more than half of the staff because they had left. Going into, so, you never know what you're going to inherit, when you move. So, you've got to be prepared. And all three of these principals right now know you just never know from, where the next step's going to be and what you're going to have to deal with. And you've got to be empowered and you've got to be ready for that. Because, as having to hire more than half of my staff at a low performing school, trying to get the right people on the bus, as Jim Collins said, was very, very important. And all of you know that. We're going to move on into our next topic, and that is going to be with Dr. Shepherd, and I'm going to pull that document up. And Dr. Shepherd, if you want to, you can go ahead and
yeah. So this is straight off of the manual here. I thought about how can I share this with you in 5 minutes. There is just very specific language here.
Tell them what manual you're talking about.
This is your principal leadership, your standards for any principal. When we talk about a North Carolina teacher observation instrument, how we observe teachers, this is straight from the standards from the executive leadership. If you look at this language, you heard this language from Dr. Lamb last night. If you were a part of the town hall, or if you've had a chance to go back and see that recording, you will see this language in the standards. So Gardner Webb, what we do here is we're going right from the manual here. This is what we are judged by when we talk about executive standards for leadership in North Carolina. You will see that this language is very specific in the artifacts that you are working on right now. I want to pull, I'm not going to read to you, but I will pull a set of language there in that first paragraph. That is the summary of the human resource leadership for this executive standard here. And one part of the language that I will point you to is in the middle of that paragraph where it says executives or principal leadership, the school executive must engage and empower accomplished teachers in a distributive leadership manner. That is the nuts and bolts of what you're working on right now, is what is highlighted in the middle of that paragraph. Right there is you are responsible for engaging in a distributive leadership manner, including support for teachers, and very important here, day-to-day decisions such as discipline, communication with parents, and protecting teachers from duties that interfere with teaching. And so that is and where I come from, the meat and potatoes right there. That's our job in a lot of ways when we talk about human resource leadership. So what are some things I can give you in 5 minutes to think about? If you look down at those executive practices, a lot of the same language you see there that Dr. Lem spoke about last night. So this is a resource for you to go back to that communicates very clearly to you what the expectations for us as we work with principals and other principals and on the job on a singular day. So support teachers in day-to-day decisions. I think the most important way we can do that is being observant, being with teachers, being very consistent on our observation instrument. And that's something that is very important. We talk about instructional rounds. We talk about being present in the classroom, in the hall, those PLCs. The more you are present as a leader, the more that it becomes your priority, the more teachers see that as an empowering motive. You are engaged in what they are doing. You're not spending your entire day in the office. If you want to bring the morale up and develop a real HR leadership with your youngest and your most veteran teachers, is about being consistent, is about being present, is about being engaged in what they are doing in a day-to-day basis. I think the biggest mistake a lot of executives can make working in schools is they are seen as the person who runs the front office, and the teaching staff are seeing the folks who work with the kids in the classroom. You have to be able to make sure that they don't see you as anybody different than an instructional leader, an educator that is in the hallways, that is in the classrooms, that works with veteran teachers, that works in PLCs, that works with parents. You figured out how to replicate myself. So Dr. Crawford, if you figure that out, because that would really greatly help me in my job. So that is a big part of this job. One of the ways that I've seen here, how to touch on multiple areas there. So engaging, empowering accomplished teachers. We appoint teachers, or they are elected by your teachers and your body and your community to sit on the school improvement team, to sit on your team there, make the decision, develop a school improvement plan, look at your data, develop goals, and go through that cycle. But we're only talking about a handful of teachers. And most of you come from schools where your staff's a lot bigger than a school improvement team. So how do you appoint those other folks? And Dr. Lem talked a lot about last night, putting folks on interview panels, which is where you want to end up being and having that type of leadership. One of the things I've seen really work for me in my school, and I'll give you this kind of nugget of information before I stop here, and that is a faculty senate. I'm not sure how many of you have a faculty senate or a resemblance of a faculty senate. But when you think about the school improvement team, they should be focused on the school improvement plan and that data that surrounds that plan. If you look at these practices here, it speaks many times about your school improvement team and plan. But what about solving everyday issues? Again, you look at those practices in the page there. It talks a lot about discipline. It talks a lot about attitude of the school, the culture of the school, 21st century learning environment. You think about efficacy. You think about instructional practices. Those are all things that you want to make decisions on as an executive leader, and you will, but where do you get your teachers' input? If you spend all your time in your school improvement team talking about those things, you're not really truly monitoring your school improvement plan, which is the purpose of a school improvement team. You can get off on all kinds of tangents that really have nothing to do or belong in a school improvement team meeting. So I found that a way for me to discuss with teachers who can show up and be a part of a meeting that set the agenda, that can be the first year teacher or a 25-year teacher is by creating a faculty senate where more teachers on your staff have a voice in the input to the executive, which is yourself. Now, are we saying that a faculty senate is going to make decisions? They're going to help give you input. They're going to have a voice in the decisions that are going to be made, you know, and a way for you can do that, put more folks on that, is committees or a faculty senate where you can say, hey, you know what, you're doing really great in your classroom right here. I see you made some substantial involvements here with giving PD to our staff. I'd really like for you to be a part of our faculty senate. We meet every other Thursday. We talk about some things that you guys bring to me. Maybe it's you want to talk about a discipline issue and how can we handle it, or maybe it's you know, parking lot lights and safety after school, or maybe it's we want to look at the field trip policy together and procedures at our school. Teachers have a voice, and that's leadership when we talk about HR. Giving more teachers a voice, helping them feel empowered. That's what you're working on here. Meeting new teachers, again, those practices there, paying attention to your national, your NC teacher working condition survey, utilizing a consistent approach to your observations are all ways that you can empower teachers so that they know what to expect from you. And it's okay to be vulnerable. You know, you want to be vulnerable in these meetings and say, guys, I don't know all the answers. You're way smarter than I am. Let's put our brains together. We're smarter together. And how can we figure out and solve these problems together? That's an empowering approach to your teachers. And I've seen work for me as an executive in my school.
Right. Thank you, Dr. Shepherd. And I want you to remind you, I was reading through these practices while you were talking, Dr. Shepherd. When you're on your own, students, I want you to go back to the Aptel Task 1, Prompt 2, and I want you to look at the example that Dr. Lamb has given based on the research from Todd Whitaker. And I'll just point this out. It says, teacher has input on professional development offerings at the school. Teacher plays a role in the development of the school improvement plan. Now, this is talking about what the principal needs to do. I want you to see how everything that he has listed about, you know, the best practices for teacher empowerment as a leader, that based on the research of Todd Whitaker, ties directly in to these practices that principals are evaluated by. And you can take any of these and you can basically turn it into a question, and when you're surveying teachers. And this is tied right directly into the teacher working conditions survey and the advanced ed survey, because it's simply let me find one. It says you know, like creates and monitors processes for hiring, inducting, and mentoring new teachers and other. You just, you know, are teachers involved in the hiring process? You know, all three of you as principals, you know that is a best practice, that you have your best teachers involved in the hiring process to help you make those decisions, a part of the interview process. And I bet you all three of you pull teachers in that interview process when you're interviewing for teachers when you can. Am I right?
Absolutely.
Yes.
You always do that. You know, in the budget process, you know, do teachers have input into the budgeting process for the school? You know, these are things that you don't just say a yes or no, but teachers are involved. You know, when you do your survey, you know, you just 5 or 6 questions is all you're looking for to find out if teachers are actively involved in leadership responsibilities at that school, to help them engage as teacher leaders. Prompt number 1, and these are where you're doing your the literature review. Prompt number 1, the first bullet says, building efficacy empowerment among staff. I want you to look right, let me see if I can find it again, right here. Now this is for the principal, but I want you to see. Communicates a positive attitude about the ability of staff to accomplish substantial outcomes to improve their efficacy. Do you see how all this is tied? And as you look at this, and you go back and look at the prompts, and you start spending time, you're going to see how all of this ties together. And that's the whole point. I know it's a lot coming at you at one time, but sometimes you have to get all the puzzle pieces and then you begin putting the puzzle together. So that's what we're doing right now. We're giving you, lots of stuff that you can pull from. Dr. Crawford, Dr. Hamilton, any comments on this?
No.
Okay. Let me see. And Dr. Crawford, I think we're going to go ahead and move on into your area as well, and that way, and then I can bring closure with the requirements for next week. I don't want to take the flow of things what we're doing right now.
Sure.
Let me pull that up. Guys, this is good stuff.
So, ladies and gents, I'll try to be brief because, like Dr. Shepard, I'm not going to read to you. When you're talking about professional development for your school, is it pulling up?
Let me see if that's going to do it. Oh, there it is.
Okay. A good place to start with where your school is with regard to professional development is the Teaching Work Conditions Survey. There's a whole section dedicated to professional development. I found it apropos last night that Dr. Lamb spoke of Big E and Little E, those things that teachers can do to affect the school, and then those things that teachers can do to affect the classroom. And so I pulled that's just directly copy and paste that particular section of the Teaching Work Conditions survey, and it'll give you some input as to what teachers think about their own learning in the classroom, in the school, and then in the district. The next thing I did, if you want to keep scrolling down, Dr. Stedman, is then I tied that also into the observation instrument. And specifically when you're looking at standard 1, talking about teacher demonstrating leadership in the school, leading the profession, and then even standard 5, I believe it was, talks specifically about professional development. A big thing to remember here, folks, is that teachers do bear some responsibility for some measure of professional development. It could be something as your math teachers keeping current with the current NCTM journal and best practices. But when you look at when you're trying to develop a professional development plan, your teaching working conditions survey is the first place you can start, and then you can take that and tie it right into the observation instrument. As I was kind of preparing for this, I came across this article. I thought it was phenomenal because it's true. It talks about the 6 flaws of professional development, and all of you can read those and you know exactly what they are, because I guarantee you at some point in your career, every last one of us has experienced one, if not all of them, particularly not measuring the impact on student learning. How many of you have been in the district that has started something in 2015 only to change it in 2016, only to try something new in 2017? And then you're left with 3 boxes or 3 crates of whatever in your school from 3 different programs because nobody wanted to, stay put on what that particular development was. So it's a great little article. Didn't take long to read. I cited it there for you if you wanted to pull it up. But I think the important thing there is that first one, is that traditional professional development treats teachers as passive learners. One of the things I would encourage all of you to remember is that far too often we treat teachers like we tell them not to treat kids when it comes to professional development. And it's really important to remember to make sure that we try to engage them, that we try to give them something they can immediately take back and use in their classroom. Now, one of the things I was asked to do was to look at some things to consider, and I'll wrap this up with that last section there. First of all, how best are you going to use funding? Whether it's local funds, Title I, SIG stands for School Improvement Grants. They were going around, they were a thing for a while. I think they're now limited to low performing and takeover schools. When I was in Hardyville, South Carolina, I had a $250,000 school improvement grant that I had to use. But you got to remember, folks, that money goes fast. And so you've got to be very, very strategic about what you're going to do and how you're going to do it. Are you getting the biggest bang for your buck? Are you being data specific about your strengths and or your weaknesses? The last bullet there is something that I really want to draw your eye line to. And is, what will the folks downtown allow you to do? For years, it was site-based management. Let the principal make the decision. Let schools decide what they want to do. And now what we're seeing is districts pushing back on that and taking more of that onus and making professional development more centralized. So I'm going to give you an example. Right here in Guilford County, up until this year, Title I funds were allowed to be used to go to the National Title I Conference, whether you took a team or not. And this year, the Title I Conference was taken off the approved list for Title I schools. I can't give you an answer as to why, but I do know that here in Guilford, we're moving more toward a centralized approach to professional development, whether it's with curriculum or anything else. Now, that doesn't absolve you of making sure that you provide things that your folks may need. So, for instance, I did use some Title I funds to hire a behavioral consultant because I knew I had 6 first-year teachers in a high-need school. And as much as I bounce around my building, I know that all those folks were going to need some hands-on support, not just from the daily walkthrough or 2 times walkthrough a day from the principal and the curriculum facilitator, but they were going to need even more hands-on coaching. So one of the things I did was I hired a behavior specialist to come in to provide those folks some even more hands-on direct implementation. But that last bullet there about what will the folks allow you to do is something that you need to keep your eye on. At one time, I was pretty good at reading the tea leaves. It's gotten a little bit more difficult now, but that's one of the things that you'll learn and pick up as you go through this job and you make mistakes and you start something, you're told you can't do it or whatever have you. So,
okay.
That's what I have there.
Okay, thank you. Instructors, I want to thank all 3 of you for some just valuable information that you have provided our students this evening. As we're bringing closure, check, if you would check while I'm bringing closure to some comments and see if there's any questions that we need to respond to. But just a reminder, most of you have provided Dr. Crawford and me with what we need for the APSL. So if you are one of those that has not, please get that information to us as soon as possible so that we can give you permission to move on to the Turnitin process and then get it on into TaskStream so you can go ahead and get that evidence behind you. Just remember your case studies, that is your reflection, and your video is due to Dr. Crawford and me by Sunday of this week. Several of you have already turned that information in, so please make sure you do that. If you have not done that yet, please remember that this is it should be a scholarly discussion. In quality time, we're expecting to see that you are spending a lot of time talking about the things that you've learned through the APSL process and how it applies to the case study that you will be studying. I would remind all of you, all 4 classes, go into Blackboard, check your grades. At this point, except for those that have not submitted the final work, it would be the case studies and then the final, whatever is the final for the APSL. Everything else should have a grade in there, and if it's got a blank space, that means you have not given Dr. Crawford and me anything, and if you don't, then it becomes a 0, and we don't want to do that. Also, we realized in the beginning that it was a learning process, and that we had to send things back and tell you this is not what we want. If you got a low grade, and Dr. Crawford, you can decide what that is for you, and I'll decide what it is for me. If, let's say, for instance, if it was a 50 on something, or if it was a failing grade on something, we don't want you to have a failing grade. We gave you opportunities to go back in and fix that, but some of you did not resubmit it for us to be able to go in there and readjust your grade. So if there is something in there that is going to cause you to have a much lower grade than what you really should be getting this semester, you need to go ahead and let Dr. Crawford and me look at that and to try to fix it. Now, we're not going to be that generous with the APTEL, Dr. Crawford. They've learned, they know what our expectations are, and lessons learned, we should not see a repeat performance of some of the things that we had to remind you of during the app. So I think we're being very good to them to give them a chance to go back and to give them credit for some things maybe they just didn't know with the APSL, but they should know now.
Well, since I was a noob as well, absolutely. I want to make sure I clear up any mistakes that I made as well. So
right.
Yes.
And, we want to give you the benefit of the doubt, and if there was something that, that we can help you with, so that when you do start the APTEL, that gives you a fresh start to be able to do it right. We're going to give you more credit than what you initially got, if you went back and fixed things. So please make sure that you check that. If there's anything that you need to talk with Dr. Crawford about, or me, because I am the intern for Dr. Crawford's students. So if there's anything you need to talk to us about, and I think Dr. Hamilton and Dr. Shepard, you have your shells now, right?
Dr. Lamb still has his shells, I believe.
You have not gotten yours yet. I know Dr. Hamilton does. You do, Dr. Hamilton.
Yes, I have mine.
Yeah,
You
I don't have
probably.
I'm here.
Okay.
I've been watching the last 30 minutes or so. I'm running 2 Zooms tonight. Excellent class. Dr. Shepard, have you finished your Blackboard training with Dr. Robertson, Dr. Emily?
I'm not. I don't think so. Not yet. So that's why.
All right. You can't. She won't give you your shell, and I've got your shell ready.
Gotcha.
But she won't give you access to the shell until you get all your bona fides from her, and
Good
then
deal.
I have your shell waiting, just like Dr. Hamilton. Dr. Hamilton, you've got your shell now, and I put all your students in it Sunday. And,
I have my
she
shell.
will- I'm guessing later Monday. You should have had yours by Monday.
And in the meantime, if there's any of those students that need to, I don't care where you are, you can communicate with any of us. So please know that if you need our assistance for anything. Dr.
Stanton,
do what now?
There's a student with a question here. It says, a clarifying question. Prompt 2 requires 2 checklists. One checklist is for me to use when I do walkthroughs, and the other is for teachers to evaluate me as a leader, ?
Well, not to evaluate her as a leader. Dr. Lamb, would you like to allude to that?
There's 2 documents. You should have a checklist and a survey. The checklist is for you to use to do walkthroughs to find out if best practices are being used in the classroom. That's for empowerment as a classroom leader. The survey is to send out to teachers to find out if they're getting opportunities to be leaders in the school. You can survey that one. You cannot survey the checklist. You can't ask teachers if they're using best practices, because they'll all tell you that they are. You've got to go and find out. And then, but the survey is to find out if they're getting to do things like serve on the school improvement team, conduct staff development, be involved in curriculum, be involved in finance, be involved in personnel decisions. That's what you can survey.
And Dr. Lamb, that was my fault. I said 2 checklists, and I meant to say survey and checklist. So that's probably they're correcting me, and that's okay. I'm glad that they asked that question. Okay, does that answer that? Okay.
I think so.
Okay. Any other questions? Do you see any?
There's one more up here. It says, oh God, I wanted to know, when they turn the final evidence to APSL, God, I lost the question.
Tell them to come, just whoever it is.
Just how will they
ask
know
them.
when they submitted the APSL has been reviewed and turn it in and is ready for task stream? Will they get an email notification?
Yeah, that's it.
When it's ready to go to task stream, either Dr. Crawford or I will tell them that it's ready to be submitted to task stream. Either Dr. Crawford or I will let them know. And if for some reason that has been an oversight, or they need to let either Dr. Crawford or me know.
They can go to My Grades where you graded it and turn it in.
Can't hear you, Dr. Lamb.
When you submit something to turn it in, your final document, when you submit that, you'll get a grade back under My Grades, just like anything else you submit. And when you open that up, it will say submit to task stream.
Right, in Blackboard. You go to Blackboard and find it under My Grades.
Under My Grades.
Okay. Y'all see any other questions?
No, sir.
Okay. Dr. Lamb, since you're online, do you have anything else you want to say to them?
Task stream, task stream, task stream. Don't forget to be collecting up your proofs for your competencies. You know, pictures, screenshots, emails, same as you did during the APSL. Don't forget to collect those proof artifacts that you're going to need later on for your competency folio in task stream. Same process as during the APSL, during the APTEL, things that you create. Make sure you know where you can find them later on. That's it.
Okay. Remember, next week is spring break. We will not be coming online next week. However, we as instructors, and Dr. Lamb, we are constantly looking at Blackboard. If you have any questions, you can submit things, continue to work through Blackboard. You can communicate with us through email. We will consistently look and help you next week as you need help. So please reach out to us. You can call us if you need us.
We're all available next week.
So Dr. Crawford, Dr. Hamilton, Dr. Shepard, any other questions, any other comments?
No.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Have a great week.
Again, thank you all. Thank everybody. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. We'll see you in a couple of weeks.
All right.